Welcome back to another episode of Indistinct Chatter. I'm Aliza, and I don't know about you, but I needed to recover from Thanksgiving. That's right, your girl, she's a party girl. She went hard on the sugar. I'm pretty sure I started and ended every day over Thanksgiving with sugar, and it honestly had me feeling hungover, I think. Like, my fingers felt weak and brittle. My stomach was on fire, but also felt like it was empty and caving in on itself. It was a whole thing. It felt like I hadn't slept in days. And I never thought sugar would do me dirty like that. Like, doesn't it know how much I love it unconditionally? It's so inconsiderate, so rude, so toxic. I don't know if you can hear my fridge in the background. Anyway, let's move on with today's episode, shall we? It's summer 2016. Netflix just released their newest show starring a bunch of kids and creepy, flower-headed, tentacled, demon-fingered, slimy dog monsters that also have humanoid abs and scary demon feet too. It's got government conspiracies, love, comedy, thrills, tragedy, all the nostalgic vibes, and it became a global phenomenon. The show? Stranger Things, of course. I can't shut up about it. I'm sure you're wondering, did Aliza end up watching Volume 1 of the final season? Duh! And I've already rewatched it. But did you know Stranger Things was almost called something else? Something a little more on the nose, maybe? A little more conspiracy-ish? It was almost called Montauk, and the Montauk lore is a little out there, so buckle up, kiddos. Get your tinfoil hats on, because we're going at this like Art Bell in Coast to Coast AM. According to some theorists on the World Wide Web, Stranger Things wasn't just inspired by fiction, but by real events that took place on Long Island in the 80s. And if it's on the internet, it must be true. So let's do my favorite thing and time travel. Ooh. This time to the 70s. We're on Long Island at Camp Hero, and unlike what I had pictured, Camp Hero is certainly not a cozy sleepaway camp for aspiring superheroes. Camp Hero was a military base, a real military base, with a job to protect the East Coast. Basically, it was America's coastal defense system, watching for enemy ships, scanning the skies for threats. During the Cold War, it housed one of those massive SAGE radar systems, like SAGE, S-A-G-E, and that stood for Semi-Automatic Ground Environment, which is a boring name, honestly, for what was basically cutting-edge technology designed to detect Soviet bombers before they could reach American soil. They really tried to play down what they were up to. Very nonchalant, very under the radar. So for decades, Camp Hero was legitimate, totally official, a bunch of military personnel doing military things with very expensive radar equipment under an iconic tower. Maybe it wasn't iconic then, but I think it's pretty iconic now. Look it up. You've likely seen it, and maybe I'm reaching, or maybe all satellites kind of look the same, but the satellite on WSQK's radio van, I think is very similar to Camp Hero's giant satellite, or whatever it's called, antenna. Maybe something there. I don't know. I did see, though, when I was Googling, WSQK, the Squawks, like radio station, the building, looks an awful like an abandoned 1940s WPTF radio station in Cary, North Carolina. Maybe Cary. I don't know. Maybe it's more of a nod to that. I don't know. I've been trying to avoid too many theories about the show because I fear one may be a secret spoiler. So any Stranger Things season 5 theories are off limits for me right now. And it's really hard. I'm sure you can understand. Here's where it gets a little more interesting, though. Picture this, it's 1981. The base has been officially decommissioned, or at least that's what the public is told. On the surface, Camp Hero looks abandoned. Crumbling concrete buildings, overgrown roads, and looming over it all is this massive radar tower. One of those Cold War relics that Looks like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Chernobyl vibes, you know? The kind of place where you see no trespassing signs, but then you also see a bunch of cameras. Like, what are they really trying to keep us out of? If it's dangerous, tear it down, right? But according to the conspiracy theory, while the base looked dead above ground, below ground was where things get strange. Get it? Deep beneath the surface, connected by a maze of tunnels, there were allegedly underground laboratories, which were secret facilities that the Air Force technically still owned, even though the base was closed. And those labs? Well, let's just say things get even stranger. Eh? The story goes that government scientists, some of them allegedly former Nazi researchers brought over through Operation Paperclip or Operation Overcast, were conducting experiments. And these experiments might have been Leaping Bunny certified, but definitely not chill. These experiments were not on rats or monkeys. They were on people, specifically on children. It's always children. These children were referred to as the Montauk boys, and it's said that these kids were runaways who wouldn't be missed, basically teenagers from broken homes, boys abducted off the streets and brought to Camp Hero. Now, why kids? Why is it always kids? Well, according to the theory, young minds are more impressionable, easier to mold and influence, easier to break down and rebuild into something else. Okay, so like, what else? What else is going on? Superheroes, maybe? Psychic soldiers? Well, at the center of all these experiments was something called the Montauk chair. Imagine a dentist's chair, but instead of a little light overhead or a big light overhead, it's surrounded by electromagnetic coils and psychotronic equipment. Like, I imagine those old-timey blow-dry chair things at the salon, the ones where you think you might actually be electrocuted or set ablaze or something. You know what I'm talking about? Well, they would strap a kid, usually a boy with strong psychic potential, into this chair. This equipment would supposedly amplify whatever was on their mind or in their mind. Their thoughts, their fears, their powers. One subject in particular, a young man they called Duncan Cameron, was said to be the star of the program, the Wonder Boy. Sound familiar? He could do things that seemed impossible. He could project his thoughts into reality, move objects with his mind, and eventually, if you believe the stories, he could tear holes in the fabric of reality itself. Time portals, baby. And honestly, actually, this gives me the creeps. Not just the abuse of children, obviously, but time travel and space and all that. It gets me real spooky-ooky. So if you hear me panting, it's just a mini panic attack, nothing crazy. Anyway, according to the conspiracy, the experiments at Montauk weren't just about mind control. They were about bending time and space, creating doorways to other dimensions, other worlds. And sometimes things came through these doorways. I have another side tangent here. Love the idea of not being alone in this universe. Like, you know the quote, is it scarier to know we're alone in this universe or know we aren't alone? Or however that quote goes. To me, being alone is scarier. Like, I love the idea of making contact with other beings, other creatures, or even ghosts. Ooh. I have a Ouija board, and I love the idea of contacting the other side. It hasn't worked yet, though, so maybe Hasbro will get a little email about that. But something about, like, Demogorgons just popping in and out whenever, wherever they want, that could put me in a home, you know, like I'd go catatonic probably. Or like, you know, in Interstellar when he can see his daughter and the book fell because of him and it's all full circle and just so sad. Like, no, I can't do that. That's not great for someone who needs to feel in control. So I don't know, like I want there to be more, but I don't think we should be messing with just popping in and out of other dimensions or timelines. It just seems messy to me. Anyway, back to it, sorry. In one particularly wild account, theorists claim that during an experiment in 1983, something went catastrophically wrong. Duncan, locked in the Montauk chair, his psychic abilities pushed to the absolute limit, accidentally summoned something from another dimension. A creature, a monster, a big baddie. And this thing, whatever it was, broke free in the facility and destroyed equipment, attacked researchers, and just basically created pure chaos. Maybe it wasn't so big. Maybe it was something fun and cute like Flubber. They had to shut the whole thing down, close the portal, destroy the creature, and then they covered it all up, erased memories, buried the evidence, left the base to just decompose and rot away. The people who claim to have been there and survived the whole thing say they only remembered years later, like their memories had been suppressed, locked away by the same government that experimented on them. It's very MK Ultra. But slowly in the 80s and 90s, those memories started to come back. And when they did, people started chit-chatting. So where did this crazy-ass story come from anyway? Who are these people claiming they were strapped into psychic chairs and traveled through time? And what makes them so believable to people? Well, friends, let me introduce you to Preston Nichols. Preston was born in 1946 on Long Island, New York. He claimed to have some pretty fancy degrees: parapsychology, psychology, and electrical engineering. And if you're wondering what parapsychology is, it's the study of alleged psychic phenomena like telekinesis, teleportation, clairvoyance, apparitional experiences, synchronicity, all the regular college stuff. In 1984, Preston started having these so-called dreams. Allegedly, they were very vivid and about underground facilities and experiments, almost like flashes of memories, but they didn't quite make sense. He'd see images of equipment, labs, faces that he didn't recognize, but somehow felt like he knew them. And I guess these dreams felt very lifelike, like real life, not a dream world. Preston became convinced that these were no dreams at all. They were actually memories that had been repressed and were starting to bubble to the surface. These memories were about his time working at Camp Hero during the Montauk Project. Now, according to Preston, he wasn't just some random guy. He was not like other girls. Preston was allegedly the lead engineer on the project. He claims to have worked on the psychotronic equipment, the mind control what's-it thing, the mechanical octopus thing above the chair. But after the project ended or shut down, depending on who you ask, the government supposedly erased his memories. Just zip-zap, move on, nothing to see or remember here, toodles. But Preston also claimed that even after his memories were erased, he would be periodically re-abducted and forced to continue working on the project against his will. Like, get in, loser. We're doing some engineering. Then they'd Men in Black him again and wipe his memory again. And they just keep doing it, and it would just keep happening, I guess. That's a lot of commitment for a cover-up. It's giving Severance, maybe, sort of. I'm like 2 episodes in, so I don't know. Luckily, Preston followed the buddy system, sort of. Enter Al Bielek. And Al's story is a lot. So I hope you're still buckled in and your tinfoil hat hasn't fallen. If it has, straighten it up. Al claimed that his name wasn't actually Al Bielek. It was actually Edward Cameron. And he was born in 1916, not 1927, like his birth certificate alleged. So we're already off to a strong start here. Al claimed that in 1943, he and his brother Duncan, yes, that Duncan, the wonder boy from the Montauk chair, participated in something called the Philadelphia experiment, which is another conspiracy theory about the U.S. Navy trying to make a battleship, USS Eldridge, invisible over radar. The story goes the experiment went wrong and the ship disappeared. Allegedly, it teleported to another location, and some crew members were supposedly fused into the ship's hull. Fused. Nasty. Oofda. But according to Al, he didn't die in that experiment. Instead, he and his brother time traveled. They jumped forward through a wormhole and landed in 1983 at Montauk, where they then became part of the Montauk Project. The more I say Montauk, the more I think I'm saying Mom Talk. Crazy times. Anyway, Al only remembered all of this after watching a movie about the Philadelphia experiment in 1988. He saw the movie, apparently experienced a deja vu, and suddenly, boom, all these repressed memories came flooding back. The time travel, the government experiments, his whole secret life as Edward Cameron. Talk about a crisis, dude. Like, earth quaking. That's like an identity issue, right? Now, I don't know about you, but if I watched some random ass movie and suddenly convinced myself I was a time traveler, I think literally everyone I know would have some serious questions. I don't know, maybe not. I'm pretty out there, and I think I'm just weird enough that people wouldn't second guess me, maybe. I don't know. Or they'd be like, oh, that's just Aliza. She's a little kooky. But Al was dead ass. And so was Preston. So now we move on to 1992. A great year. And to be quite frank with you, I heard that's when the best people were born. And at this time, Preston teams up with a writer by the name of Peter Moon. Only Peter's real name is Vincent Barbaric. Everyone in the story, I think, just kind of has an alias, I guess. Together, they published a book called The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time. Cover looks like it features a golden Lucifer, and I mean, it got me thinking a Stranger Things spinoff that focuses on the Denver airport would be brilliant. Think of it, like lizard people, Tom Hanks, they're all there. I'm onto something here, even if it's probably not an individual thought, like, think about it. It'd be great. Somebody, tell the Duffer Brothers. Even if they've heard that pitch a million times, pitch it again. Anyway, full disclosure, I only read the Spark Notes. Sorry, but from what I read, this book is pretty freaking wild. It's got experiments, time travel, Duncan and his psychic powers, the underground labs, and the monster that broke through from another dimension. It definitely comes off like sci-fi, and according to the critics, it is, which is quite interesting. Sci-fi, science fiction. Right at the beginning of the book, they even include a disclaimer. It says, whether you read this as science fiction or nonfiction, you are in for an amazing story. Whether you read this as science fiction or nonfiction. Some argue that they're straight up telling us from page 1 that they're not entirely sure if this is real life. They describe their evidence as soft facts, which is kind of an oxymoron, right? Definitely, maybe. People believed it anyway. This book became this underground sensation and was so mesmerizing that there was a whole series of Montauk Project books. There were also documentaries, a 2015 movie called Montauk Chronicles, and people, both skeptics and believers, would take adventures to visit the real Camp Hero trying to find evidence and explore the tunnels. But why? Why did people believe a story that the authors themselves seemingly couldn't fully commit to? That's where things get interesting, my friends. So we've now come to understand that the Montauk Project didn't just come out of nowhere. It essentially landed in the perfect storm of events and happenings that just made it seem not impossible. Let's talk about MK Ultra. I mentioned this earlier because MK Ultra is real and it's horrifying. It is not a fun stoner movie like Kristen Stewart and Jesse Eisenberg led us to believe. In real life, between 1953 and 1973, the CIA ran a program called Project MK Ultra. This was no conspiracy theory, folks. This was a real, documented, government-admitted program where they conducted mind control experiments on oblivious American and Canadian citizens. With these tests, we're talking LSD experiments, psychological torture, sensory deprivation, and hypnosis, all with the idea to figure out how to control people's minds. They tested on prisoners, hospital patients, and people in vulnerable positions who just couldn't really say no. And they kept this shit under wraps for 20 years. We only know about it because some document survived a destruction order in the 70s, and then a congressional investigation resulted in the spilling of the tea. So that's kind of why when people heard about the Montauk Project, about the government doing secret mind control experiments on children, it didn't sound that out of pocket anymore. They had literally done it before. That can of worms is now open and there's no getting those worms back in. If they did MK Ultra, what else is the government capable of? And then there's Operation Paperclip that I mentioned earlier. After World War II, the US government secretly recruited over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians, and many of them were said to be former Nazis, meaning some of them had worked on some truly horrific human experimentation during the war. And we brought them here with open arms, one might say. We gave them jobs, new identities, and let them work on American projects. So when the Montauk conspiracy claimed that former Nazi scientists were conducting experiments at Camp Hero, wasn't that crazy of an idea? Not totally impossible, you know? Side note, if you haven't seen Hunters on Prime, it's about these Nazi hunters in 1970s New York, so around this time. And they hunt escaped Nazi officers who are creating like a Fourth Reich in the US, basically a resurgence of Nazi Germany, neo-Nazis, if you will. And it references Operation Paperclip. It's also got a huge twist at the end of season 1, and I love twists. Plus Al Pacino, you know? The whole cast is great, actually. Anyway, added to all that crap is the general atmosphere of Cold War paranoia. This is said to be an era when people genuinely believed the government was hiding all kinds of things from them. UFOs at Area 51, secret weapons, surveillance programs, and honestly, a lot of that turned out to be true. The government was doing secret surveillance. They were testing experimental aircraft. They did lie to the public about a lot of things. I mean, kind of like now, don't you think? It's a perfect storm of real documented government experiments plus real Nazi scientists on American soil plus real Cold War secrecy, and all that equals, why wouldn't the Montauk Project be real? If the government admitted to doing MK Ultra, if they admitted to Operation Paperclip, again, what else are they hiding? What other secrets are they keeping? Secrets don't make friends. That whole what don't we know question is what kept and honestly still keeps people hooked. That's probably why Preston's book, with all of its soft facts and sci-fi disclaimers, found its audience. Because in a world where the truth was already stranger than fiction, maybe the story wasn't so strange after all. But this whole story takes an even wilder turn. I know, no way, right? It does. The Montauk Project didn't just stay within tin hat circles. It didn't just live on in message boards or in underground documentaries. She went mainstream, baby. She became Stranger Things. So how did a questionable but believable conspiracy theory from 1992 end up inspiring one of Netflix's biggest hits? Well, for that, we need to meet two brothers from North Carolina who were just as obsessed with the Montauk Project as everyone else. I introduce you to Matt and Ross Duffer. The Duffer brothers, if you will. Matt and Ross are twin brothers born in 1984, which is the same year Preston Nichols was getting his memories back, remember? Coincidence? These rascals have been making movies since the 3rd grade, according to Wikipedia. I guess their parents gave them a Hi8 video camera, just one of those handheld cameras with a screen that flapped open, the one you could hold with just like one hand. The rest is history. They'd make their own feature-length films, and their first one was an adaptation of Magic the Gathering. You might know it, the card collecting trading game thing. By the time they got to high school, they were big into horror and sci-fi, and before they broke into Hollywood, after high school, they attended Chapman University in California. Breaking into Hollywood is not easy. They wrote multiple scripts, worked as assistants, basically everything you need to do to break into Hollywood. Eventually, they got their movie Hidden made. Hidden was about a family hiding in a bomb shelter from monsters. It's got our guy Alexander Skarsgård, and it caught folks' attention. The two brothers were later researching the Philadelphia experiment, the teleporting Navy ship thing, for a school documentary. And while they were digging, they pulled in Alice and went down the rabbit hole. There they found the Montauk Project. Camp Hero, psychic children, time portals. You know. The Duffers started developing a concept for a show. Originally, it was going to be a found footage film, but then they pivoted to a TV series. Can you guess what they called it? Montauk, not Momtalk. The original pitch was set in Montauk, Long Island. The whole vibe was going to be this coastal town thing. They specifically wanted to capture that Jaws feeling, you know? Amity Island vibes, small town, big secrets, ocean nearby. One of the brothers actually released a little BTS showing their video pitch full of scenes of some of the most iconic films and shows of our lifetime, before our lifetime. And now I can really see all the nods to these iconic films that inspired the show. It's a really fun Easter egg hunt if you're rewatching. All this to say, when you look at the original Montauk concept and compare it to the conspiracy theory, the parallels are pretty interesting. The Montauk boys, the runaway kids, allegedly experimented on at Camp Hero, remember? They became our girl 11 and all the other numbered children at Hawkins' lab. Kids with shaved heads, government experiments, psychic powers. It's pretty spot on. And Duncan Cameron, the wonder boy who could move things with his mind and open portals to other dimensions. That's basically 11, right? Her whole character arc. She's got the telekinesis. She opens the gate to the upside down. Like she's Duncan. And those sensory deprivation experiments that were supposedly part of the Montauk Project. I mean, 11 floats in that tank or a tub with blackout goggles and searches for people in the void. What about the interdimensional monsters that allegedly broke through during the experiments? Well, friends, meet the Demogorgon. Rest in peace, Dart. And the Mind Flayer, Vecna, the whole upside down, it can basically be seen as like, what if the portal of Montauk actually opened? And don't forget the secret government labs conducting all these experiments. Hawkins National Laboratory is said to be Camp Hero, just with a different name and a Midwestern zip code. Even the timelines are parallel or in line. The Montauk Project allegedly ends in the early 80s when everything went wrong and they had to shut it down. And Stranger Things starts in 1983 when 11 escapes and the Demogorgons break through. Hello! So the Duffer Brothers took this pitch of Montauk, set on Long Island, inspired by the conspiracy, and started shopping it around to networks. And believe it or not, they get rejected. A lot. Like more than 12 times, apparently. The networks were just not impressed. That is, until Netflix. Netflix looked at their pitch and said, sure, but, and wanted to make a bunch of changes. First, they wanted to film in Atlanta. Apparently, it's better for budget and logistics, especially compared to Long Island. Weather's more predictable, all that important stuff. So the Duffer Brothers moved to the setting to a fictional town in Indiana. Hawkins, Indiana, which honestly gave them more creative freedom, I imagine. They could blow up the town, put it under quarantine, do whatever they wanted without worrying about, an actual town. But now they needed a new title. You can't call a show Montauk and not have it set in Montauk. So they got to brainstorming, and looked at Stephen King book covers for inspiration, specifically Firestarter, and eventually landed on Stranger Things. I don't know if you can picture it or if you can Google it. The book cover does kind of give Stranger Things vibes with that font, or maybe Stranger Things gives Firestarter vibes, however you want to word it. Fun fact, Stranger Things sounds similar to another Stephen King title, Needful Things. The Duffers have said they had a lot of heated arguments about the final title, but Stranger Things stuck. Stranger Things sounds mysterious and nostalgic. It doesn't seem too on the nose. And just like all the time when the gang is faced with a side quest, I think, well, Stranger Things have happened. The show premiered in 2016, and you know how it went. It exploded. It became a cultural phenomenon. Everyone was talking about it. 11 became an icon. Friends Don't Lie became a catchphrase. Go Waffles had a resurgence. It was everywhere. The amount of costumes related to Stranger Things is endless, and the merch is limitless. Things were a little messy, though. 2 years after Stranger Things premiered, a filmmaker named Charlie Kessler filed a lawsuit against the Duffer Brothers. Charlie claimed that he had created his own project about the Montauk conspiracy and even made a short film called Montauk, which premiered at the Hamptons International Film Festival in 2012. Allegedly, he was developing a larger screenplay called the Montauk Project. And according to Charlie, in April 2014, he met the Duffer Brothers at the Tribeca Film Festival, got to chatting, and Charlie says he pitched him his Montauk Project idea and claims he told them about his script, his concept, his whole vision for a story about missing kids and government experiments in Montauk. And then Charlie says Duffers basically stole his idea and turned it into Stranger Things. He sued them and asked for a third of the income from the show, which, considering Stranger Things is one of Netflix's biggest deals, it's a lot of money. Like, what? It's got to be like over 300 mil, right? I don't know. I don't know how to tell what a show is worth. $1 billion? Is that how much the show's worth? Is that crazy? Or like, am I close? Is that way too much to think it is or not enough? I don't know. The Duffer Brothers said, nah, dog, nice try. Their lawyer said they never saw Charlie's film, never had a substantial conversation with him, and definitely didn't steal his idea. And more importantly, they came with receipts. The Duffers provided emails and documents dating back to 2010, 4 years before that alleged meeting at Tribeca, showing that they were already developing a show about the Montauk Project. They had an early pilot script from 2013 that featured many of the key characters that we know today and plot points from Stranger Things. Bill Byers goes missing, Mike Wheeler, Joyce Hopper, 11, The Upside Down. It was basically all there years before they allegedly met Charlie Kessler. And I mean, it's a popular conspiracy theory. I'm sure a lot of people had similar ideas. But in April 2019, a judge denied the Duffer Brothers' request for summary judgment, meaning the case was going to go to trial and be a whole to-do. But then, right before the trial started in May of 2019, Charlie withdrew his lawsuit. Girl, he saw those depositions. He'd seen those emails from 2010 and the 2013 pilot script. It was clear that the Duffer Brothers had independently come up with Stranger Things on their own. I mean, not saying they didn't meet and discuss their projects, but remember how I said I'm sure a lot of people had similar ideas to Stranger Things? The Montauk Project conspiracy was and is just so compelling to so many people. It's such a rich, weird, specific story that multiple creators ended up seeing the same kind of vision and potential for something great. It's got everything you need for a great story, really. I mean, you've got your kids in danger, government cover-ups, psychic powers, monsters, nostalgia. It's all there. And if Stranger Things has proved anything, it's that the Montauk Project, even as a totally unproven, soft facts, science fiction, or maybe not conspiracy theory, has serious storytelling power. Preston wrote a book that people couldn't stop talking about. The Duffer Brothers made a show that people can't stop talking about. Charlie made a short film. Documentaries have been made. People visit Camp Hero looking for evidence still to this day. Shit's interesting. The Montauk Project, real or not, has become modern lore, and lores have a way of inspiring people over and over again for many, many years. Okay, but you're probably still wondering, Aliza, please just tell us if there's any truth to it, like at all. Just a crumb, maybe? Well, my lumpy-brained friends, we've learned about what people claim happened and all about Preston Nichols' soft facts. We've learned how this conspiracy theory inspired one of the biggest TV shows of all time. But you want to know if there's even just a sliver of facts or truth to it all, huh? Well, here's the deal. I'm going to give it to you straight, okay? You're old enough to know the truth. No, the Montauk Project never happened. Or at least there's no credible evidence that any of this actually occurred. Not the psychic children, the time portals, the interdimensional monsters, none of it. I know, major buzzkill. But if I can be so bold with you and discuss why this story is said with such confidence, it's kind of important. First, let's talk about the evidence, or lack thereof, really. Everything we know about the Montauk Project essentially comes from one place, and that place is recovered repressed memories. Preston Nichols and Al Bielek, these guys claim they didn't remember any of this until years later when the memories suddenly magically came flooding back. And unfortunately, memories aren't reliable, especially repressed memories. Like, at all. There's actually been a ton of research on this, and it turns out our brains are really, really bad at storing accurate memories, especially traumatic ones. And when someone tells you they recovered a memory from decades ago, especially after reading a book about it or watching a movie about it, I'm sorry to say, but that's often a red flag. It's called false memory syndrome, and basically our brains can create memories that feel completely real, but never actually happened. Therapists in the 80s and 90s used to use hypnosis and suggestion to help people recover memories. And it actually led to this whole scandal where people were accusing their parents of abuse that never really occurred. It was a whole thing. Maybe more on that in another episode. So anyway, when Preston Nichols said he recovered his memories after they were supposedly erased by the government, and when Al Bielek says he remembered being a time traveler after watching some movie, hate to break it to you, but those are not reliable sources. They're not evidence, they're stories. And speaking of Al again, Dude claimed he was born in 1916, but his birth certificate says 1927. He claimed his real name was Edward Cameron, but there's no record of an Edward Cameron participating in the Philadelphia experiment at all. He claimed he time traveled from 1943 to 1983, which, I mean, come on. If you can't even prove your birth year, it's going to be hard for people to follow along with you. I know that it can be argued that everything can be erased or swept under the rug, blah, 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 but then there's the physical evidence, or again, the lack of physical evidence. Camp Hero is actually a public state park now. It's been open to the public since the early 2000s, and people hike there. They go exploring and take photos. And you know what they found? Old military buildings, sealed tunnels, graffiti, some weird vibes maybe, but no psychic chairs, no underground laboratories full of psychotronic equipment, no portals to other dimensions, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. Explorers are said to have found sealed tunnels and some odd documents, but nothing that really screams secret government experiment. Most of it's just your standard Cold War era military infrastructure, bunkers, storage areas, the kind of stuff you'd expect from a decommissioned radar base, I guess. There's even this guy, Jacques Vallée, who is a legit UFO researcher. Like, he studied this stuff for decades and was actually a consultant on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Even he looked into the Montauk Project and called it highly questionable. He specifically said that Preston and Al's accounts were not credible. And remember, Preston himself wrote in his book, soft facts, not hard facts. It's not really how you present evidence of a real government conspiracy, if you ask me. It sounds more like you're trying to cover your ass when you're writing something that might be made up. So no, the Montauk Project from those books and the inspiration for Stranger Things did not happen. There's no definitive evidence and the sources are deemed unreliable. So unfortunately, the story doesn't hold up. But, and this is important, that doesn't mean Camp Hero was just sitting there doing nothing. Like I said, Camp Hero was a real military base. It was built during World War II as part of the coastal defense system. The whole point was to watch for enemy ships and aircrafts approaching the East Coast. It was legit. It had bunkers, the whole shebang. Then during the Cold War, it became home to that huge, massive SAGE radar installation I brought up earlier. And honestly, the radar system was genuinely pretty cool on its own, like truly no psychic powers needed. SAGE was this incredibly advanced system designed to detect Soviet bombers before they could reach American soil. The radar tower at Camp Hero could track aircraft hundreds of miles away, and it was part of a whole network of radar stations across the country, all linked together by early computer systems. This was high-tech shit for the 50s and 60s. It was cutting-edge technology for the time. The base operated throughout the Cold War, and then in 1981, it was officially decommissioned. The military packed their shit up, left the buildings to decompose, and eventually the land was turned into Camp Hero State Park. You're probably wondering, though, what about those sealed tunnels that everyone's talking about? The underground facilities? Yeah, they're real. But they're not secret psychic laboratories. They're just military infrastructure, bunkers, storage areas, command centers. Boring. The kind of stuff every military base has, especially ones that were part of the air defense network. They're sealed off now because obviously they're structurally unsound and dangerous, not because the government is hiding aliens or time machines. Someone just doesn't want to get sued because your dumbass climbed on a rotting building and got a boo-boo. Some explorers have gotten into the tunnels over the years, though. People love trespassing, you know? In their discoveries, they found graffiti, old equipment, and some good old creepy vibes. Allegedly, one piece of graffiti even said, "Stranger, help me." Ooh, spooky. But no psychotronic chairs, no portals. But things still get fun and funky, all right? In 2008, way after the conspiracy theory had already taken off, something a little odd happens, a little strange happens. A creature washed up on the shores of Montauk, just a few miles from Camp Hero, and it was bizarre to say the least. Like, not to be mean, but it was uggo. It was hairless, kind of bloated, it had this weird beak-like thing. No one could immediately identify what it was. If you Google Montauk Monster, you'll see it. It maybe had hooves at one point. I don't know. Its feet look like horses without their shoes, kind of. You know what I mean? Like stringy. Photos ended up going viral, and of course, conspiracy theorists were like, "See? This is proof something escaped from the underground labs. People speculated it came from Plum Island, which is this government animal disease research center nearby. Maybe it was a failed experiment. Maybe it was a mutant. Maybe it was an alien. But experts say it was probably just a dead raccoon. I know, it's so sad. I don't know if they're raccoon experts or what kind of experts these people are, but apparently they saw photos and they just all kind of agreed that it was just a raccoon after decomposition begins when you're in the water. And I guess the beak that everyone points out is likely just exposed bone or cartilage. Nature's metal, man. Still, the Montauk Monster became this whole thing. It reignited interest in the conspiracy and people started talking about Camp Hero again. More documentaries were made, all that fun stuff. But there's an interesting theory I came across while researching this, and honestly, it's a theory that I believe more. A researcher named Paul Fagan, he's a guy who actually went through the National Archives trying to figure out what really happened at Camp Hero. He thinks maybe the government was hiding something there, just not psychic experiments. Paul thinks that they might have buried a nuclear reactor at the site in the 50s, and a nuclear reactor would explain a lot, actually. The secrecy of everything, the don't ask questions vibes, and honestly, if the government wanted to cover up a seemingly boring but potentially dangerous nuclear reactor that they didn't want people freaking out about, letting conspiracy theories, especially about time travel and psychic children, run rampant is kind of a perfect distraction. Like, if people are arguing about whether or not Duncan could open portals with his mind, they're not asking about radioactive waste or nuclear accidents, you know? Let the conspiracy theorists do the cover-up work for you. But honestly, that's why I have a problem with conspiracy theories sometimes. Like, I love them, they're fun and all, but I feel like they're probably distracting, right? Like, maybe that's my biggest conspiracy hot take. All conspiracies are started to distract us from something else, something worse, but in time, or if we never find out, it's not that big of a deal, you know? Like, it's the whole better to ask for forgiveness than permission thing. Now, I don't know if all that's true. Paul does have some interesting research and all, but at the end of the day, it's still just a theory. Kind of makes you think though, right? Maybe the real cover-up was way less exciting than psychic soldiers. Maybe it was just a reactor. Some radioactive materials, standard Cold War stuff that they didn't want to share and get everyone worked up over. What they don't know won't hurt them, hopefully, and if it does, no one will know anything, right? Either way, what we can say for sure is Camp Hero was a real military base with real Cold War technology. It had underground facilities because that's just what military bases have. It was closed in 1981 because the SAGE radar system was becoming obsolete and the Cold War was winding down, and now it's a state park where you can hike and look at the ocean and take creepy photos of abandoned buildings. But you know what? The story of the Montauk Project, or the idea of it, has had a much bigger impact than I think people ever thought it would. Because here's the thing. The Montauk Project might not be real, but the questions it raises, I mean, those are pretty real. And the way this conspiracy theory has shaped our culture, inspired stories, and made us think about government secrecy, I mean, I think that's worth talking about, right? Now that we've established that the Montauk Project didn't really legit happen, why does this story have so much power? I mean, it inspired a massive Netflix hit. Why do conspiracy theories like this one become these modern lores that just won't quit? It comes to one simple thing, really. The power of what if. What if the government is hiding something? What if there are secret experiments we don't know about? What if the truth is stranger than fiction? Like, we know there are gaps in conspiracies, big gaps, small gaps, always a gap or two though. It's that gap between what we know as regular people and what governments actually admit to doing. That's where these stories bloom. That's where conspiracy theories grow and thrive and become something bigger than just a little local legend. Think about it. If you hadn't been told about the CIA's secret LSD tests and torturing people to develop mind control techniques, you'd probably think that's absolutely wackadoodle. Like, no way. Or maybe you'd be like, yeah, that checks. And it does check. Before Edward Snowden, if someone said the government was collecting data on every phone call and email in America, people would have call that person a conspiracy nut. I mean, Edward was probably called a nut, but then the NSA leaks happened and we found out that, yeah, mass surveillance is real. Smile, you're on candid camera, bitch. So when you live in a world where the crazy theories keep turning out to be true, or at least partially true, it's not that wild to wonder what else might be happening, what else we aren't being told. And conspiracies aren't just for fun. They're not just nothing. They have a real cultural impact that can spark your favorite TV show. But it's more than just the show. The Montauk Project has shaped how we think about the 1980s. I mean, before this deep dive, I saw the 80s as this bright, neon-colored world full of hairspray and cigarette smoke, boxy cars, and digital arcade sounds. But now, when I picture the 80s, I'm seeing Cold War paranoia, government secrets, kids on bikes fighting evil. And maybe most importantly, it's shaped how we think about government secrecy. The Montauk Project asks the question, if they could do something this horrific, would they? And for a lot of people, the answer is yes, because they already have. I mean, every day I hear something new about the government that seems so out of the realm of reality, but it never really fully surprises me, you know? And the Montauk Project's influence doesn't stop with Stranger Things, buddy. This conspiracy theory has inspired so much more than just one show. There's a German Netflix series called Dark. It was recommended in my research, and I guess it's about this time travel mystery in a small town. And of course, it's got secret government experiments on missing children. Then there's The X-Files, which has referenced the Montauk Project, of course. The entire show was all about government conspiracies and cover-ups, so naturally, Montauk fits right in. Funny little side story, when I was younger, I would get the goosies just from X-Files commercials, and if I saw jet streams creating an X in the sky, I'd get so paranoid because I thought that I was about to be abducted. Imagination's wild, friends. There are still YouTube videos and TikToks that are being made about Montauk, so many Reddit threads. People still debate whether there's any truth to it. They share photos of the radar tower, speculating about what might still be hidden underground. It's a never-ending story. Like I said, if the government admitted to MK Ultra, Operation Paperclip, and the whole NSA spying on us for years before we found out, what else aren't they telling us now? And that, my friends, is the power of conspiracy theories. They thrive in that space between what we know for sure and what we suspect might be true to fill in those gaps. And as long as governments keep secrets, which let's be real, they always will, there will always be stories like the Montauk Project or the Mothman or whether 9/11 was an inside job or not. So many conspiracies. At the end of the day, conspiracy theories aren't really about the specifics though. What people get from most conspiracies is question everything and trust no one. They stem from not being told the truth. And sometimes those theories, those conspiracies, they have truth. Whether they're secrets in hiding or just local lore, they've got us wondering what if. And that's good. That's a good thing. Didn't your parents teach you to always keep wondering? Don't just accept things as you're told all the time. Demand transparency from people in power. That stuff matters. That's what my parents taught me. And the more we keep asking questions, the more we become sleuths. And by now, I think we're all kind of a little bit sleuthy, okay? We have this desire for the truth. And if it's nothing anyway, then at least maybe we'll get a good show to watch as a consolation prize. Now, where does all this leave us? I brought you on a journey today. We ventured from a Netflix show to a questionable book of soft facts, Cold War paranoia, and now we're here asking the big questions, right? Does lack of evidence really matter if the story still matters? Are conspiracies harmful or harmless entertainment? And most of all, the biggest question, what if? So I'm curious, dear listeners, if anyone has been to Camp Hero, do you still believe the Montauk Project is real? Am I just covering for the government? Dun, dun, dun. Who's to say? I'll never tell. I hope you stay busy asking the big questions and maybe looking at some conspiracy theories a little differently, like, what is the conspiracy hiding, maybe? What's the conspiracy theory in the conspiracy theory? Be safe. If you're digging, know when to step back into reality. If you're exploring, be safe. Leave it as is. Don't get caught. I mean, I can't tell you what to do, but protect yourself, okay? Crazy world, lots of smells. Until next time, love ya. Love you. Bye.